today's video, I'm going to be recommending you some books based off of other books that you may have read and enjoyed in the past. So if you read one and enjoyed it, then you most probably will enjoy the one that I'm matching up with it. I have made this video a couple of times in the past, and I will have all of my previous ones linked down in the description below in case you wanted to get more recs than the ones that I'm even mentioning in today's video. And some of the books that are being talked about today have been mentioned in my previous videos, except this time I do have a different matchup for it. So nothing is being repeated, even though I have made this video, I believe, 3 times now. So with that said, let's get right into the books. So first up, I've got Mile High by Liz Tomford that I'm matching up with Consider Me by Becca Mack. So both of these books are hockey sports romances. So you're following a guy who is a professional hockey player, and he happens to also be an actual player. And it's one of those books where it's like, I was a player until I met you. So in Mile High, you're following the pro hockey player who ends up meeting a stewardess on his team's private jet and then ends up falling for her. But before her, he just would like sleep around all the time. And that's kind of what he was known for. And then Consider Me is very similar. He's a professional hockey player. He is very well known for being an actual player and sleeping around all the time. And then one day he meets this girl at a party and she ends up turning him down because she's not really interested in getting involved with someone like that. And then he ends up not wanting to take that for an answer. So he ends up chasing after her and trying to get her to consider him. So both of these are super similar, not only in the actual storyline, but also in the way that it's being built up and it's written and everything like that. Like both of these books are pretty thick and you do get a lot of like build up in it, a lot of conversations, a lot of moments, a lot of scenes with both of the characters to really like make them feel real and feel like you're just like watching them throughout their lives. So if you really did enjoy one of these books, then I highly recommend checking out the other because most probably you will enjoy it too. So these next 2 books, I feel like I never talk about on my channel anymore, mostly because I feel like they're just books that I read a very long time ago. But anytime that I'm looking at my shelf and I see one of them, I automatically think of the other because I feel like they're just super similar. So obviously, if you liked one, I'm assuming that you would enjoy the other. So those 2 books are Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, which is definitely the more popular one of the 2. So if you did like this one, I'm assuming that you would end up enjoying Scandalous by LJ Shen. So both of these are age gap, kind of forbidden-y type of feeling romances. So in Birthday Girl, you're following this girl who is 19 years old and ends up having a relationship with her ex-boyfriend's father who is 38 years old. And then in Scandalous, you're following a girl who is 18 years old and she ends up having a romance with her father's colleague who is 33 years old. So she basically has an internship at her father's office and this guy is one of her father's partners, so he's in the same office and they're gonna end up working together and it's kind of very forbidden sort of feel. She's 18, he's 33, he happens to be a single dad and technically this guy is a single dad as well because it's her ex-boyfriend's father. So there are a lot of similarities when it comes to the actual setup of the book. Both of these do give off very different storylines. Like this is like a very specific storyline. She's moving in with her boyfriend at the time and then it ends up turning into her ex-boyfriend and then she's slowly going to fall for the father and they're kind of like living together. So it's got a forced proximity thing, and this one has a forced proximity thing too, but because they're working together. And he's a single dad as well. He has a very young daughter and she's a big part of the story. So if you are a fan of single dads and you like age gaps and you like workplace environments and you like forbidden romances, I recommend checking this one out, especially if you've read this and you have enjoyed it in the past. Next, I wanted to share with you The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, which is a book that I'm assuming you might have seen around before because it is quite popular and it has been around for a minute. And if you did enjoy this, then I think you might really enjoy Here With Me by Samantha Young. So at first glance, these 2 books do not seem to be extremely similar because they do have 2 completely different storylines. But when you really like look at the details, you realize that there are actually a lot of similarities between the 2 in the sense of like the basicness of the story. Like both of these, you're following a girl who ends up traveling somewhere very far to get to know her father who she's not very close with. And then she ends up having an enemies to lover sort of vibes relationship, kind of like a hate to love. They both initially do not get along with each other and then they're slowly going to fall for each other anyway. And then on top of that, they do technically both take place in like small towns of sorts. In this one, you're following a girl who ends up going to a small town in Alaska. And in this one, you're following a girl who ends up going to like a small community in Scotland. And then this one, you do have like a very interesting storyline in the sense of like, you know, she has to get used to being in this type of area because like she's in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, and she's like a city girl. So she's having a hard time like, you know, settling down in a much different environment than what she's used to. And also in this book, her father is not doing very well. That's actually the reason why she went to go and visit him. And then you kind of get to follow that entire storyline. And in this one, you kind of have a mystery going on. Like she was actually not doing very well and she decides that she wants to get to know her father before it's too late. So she goes to Scotland where he works as a security guard. And then there ends up being a mystery in this small community that her father works in. And then she's going to end up helping to solve the mystery. So two very different storylines, but at the basis of it, they are actually quite similar. So if you did enjoy one, I do think you would enjoy the other. So these next two books are both very, very popular. And I feel like I have mentioned this on my channel at some point in the past of how one really reminded me of the other, but it wasn't necessarily in this video specifically, like one of my past videos of if you liked this, then you like this. So it's a perfect time to actually officially match them up together. So if you did enjoy the Addicted series by Kristen Becker-Ritchie, then I really do think that you would enjoy Binding and Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. So these two books, I mean, slash series, whatever you want to call it. This is a 10-book series. This is a duet of 2 books. But these two stories definitely have extremely different storylines. But the feelings that you get from reading both of them, I personally think are extremely similar. They both do have this like found family of sorts where you're following a handful of characters. Some of them are actually family and some of them are just friends, but you really get to see them as a group all hanging out with each other, kind of going through their lives together. You really get a lot of interactions and conversations and build up in both of these stories. And you kind of just get to like dive deep into their lives and they feel so real because you spend so much time with them that it's a specific vibe that not every type of book gives off. But I do think that both of these books do give that off. And the feelings that you get from reading one of them are the same feelings that you'll get from reading the other. So if you kind of understood what I was saying because you have read one and enjoyed it and understand the vibes I'm trying to explain to you, then I really do think that you would enjoy the other one, even though they are extremely different storylines. So the next matchup that I have for you is one that I know a lot of people will be very wary of, and I would be very wary of it as well because I have seen people try to match books up with this book that I'm going to be talking about, and I'm usually always disappointed because it just does not hit on the same level, but I'm actually matching it up for reasons that you might not think. So I really want you to listen to me before you just blindly take this recommendation. So I wanted to match up the Throne of Glass series with the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, and I have a couple of reasons for this, so just hear me out for a second. First up, I wanted to talk about our two main characters. So in Throne of Glass, we have Selena, who is very well known for making plans on top of plans and not sharing them with anybody. And then the second that they actually happen, all of a sudden everybody's like, why didn't you let us in on your little secret? Like, you should have told us and we could have helped you. And then she's just like, look, it just like happened how it happened and I'll try it better next time. And happens to be same thing goes for Kelsier in the Mistborn series. He is like the head of the crew and they're trying to overthrow an empire, and he is just one of those guys who makes plans on top of plans and kind of like keeps them to himself. And then the second that they come to the light, everybody's like, why didn't you tell us? Like, why did you keep us in the dark? Things like that. And I just think that both of these main characters give off very similar vibes. So if you did enjoy Selena as a character, then I really do think you'd be able to get down with Kelsier. And then on top of that, even though they are following extremely different storylines and do have very different magic systems of sorts, I do also think that the basis of the storyline is quite similar in a specific way, in the sense of like in Mistborn, you're overthrowing an empire, and then in Throne of Glass, she is kind of trying to overthrow, the king of Otterland. So it does have something along those lines, like very heavy in politics and things like overthrowing of an empire and war and stuff like that, even though, again, very different type of storylines. But even besides for just like that sort of thing, and there's probably a couple of other matching ups of sorts that I can probably think of, the big thing that I really wanted to share is the world building and the way how both of these series I feel like are on a different level world building wise than the majority of fantasy series that you might come across. So I have said this in the past about the Throne of Glass series. I don't remember where, maybe it was on like TikTok or something, but I've said how I feel like a lot of people try to compare things to Throne of Glass and then they don't end up living up to the expectations that people put on them. And I think a reason for that, even if people don't necessarily realize it, is because of the world building and the way that the story is built up so freaking intricately. Like, it's almost as if this story is actually real. Like, it is happening in a different dimension in the multiverse of sorts, and you are just lucky enough to like kind of getting a chance to peek into this moment in time in this universe. Like, this story would have happened with or without you reading it. And I feel like not every single fantasy series necessarily feels like that. A lot of series feels like, look, this author came up with a really great idea, a really great fantasy series. She thought it out very well, decided to put it on page, and now she's ready to share it with you, and you're gonna have a great time reading it. And then there are other stories that feel so real, where it's almost as if like this is like a history book. Like, you are just getting to see a moment in time in a different universe. And I feel like there is a very distinctive difference between the two. And I might not be explaining it correctly, but if you understand, then you understand. And my point with that is that I do think that the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson and just the entire Cosmere universe in general really does live up on the same level as the Throne of Glass series, in the way where it's just like, it feels so freaking real that if you weren't even reading it, this story still would be happening without, you know, you getting to see it. So I don't know if that really makes sense, but I just think that if you really appreciated the world building of the Throne of Glass series, then you really would appreciate the world building of the Brandon Sanderson Cosmere universe, as well as the Mistborn series specifically. And then the last matchup that I wanted to share with you for today's video is going to be The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which is a very, very popular college sports romance that I'm assuming you've either at least seen around before, if not read. And if you did enjoy it, then I do think that you very much would enjoy Blindside by Candy Steiner. So this is another college sports romance, except this one's football. So this is a hockey college sports romance. This is a football college sports romance, but still college sports romances, so it gives off the same vibes. And happens to be both of these stories are fake dating. But not only is it a fake dating scenario, but you're actually following the girl who has a crush on another guy and is going to use this sports player to get that other guy's attention so that hopefully she can make him jealous and therefore he'll want to go out with her. But obviously she's going to be spending so much time with this guy that she's fake dating, who is a professional sports player, and therefore she's going to end up falling for him instead. So I do think that if you like the general vibe of this story and like the tropes that it has, then you would very much like this story as well. And now that my dog is getting up, I do think that it is time for me to go and take them out for a walk. So I guess that means this is the end of the video. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. I do hope that not only you enjoyed it, but also found some good recommendations. And if you have any recommendations for me that like match up with one of the books that I talked about in today's video, I would love to know down in the comment section below, because obviously I have read and enjoyed every single book that I talked about in today's video. And if you have another book that is pretty similar, I would love it to hear about it. So either way, with that said, please give this video a like if you did enjoy it. Also subscribe to my channel if you're not currently subscribed, because I would really appreciate it. But either way, I just appreciate you taking the time to watch, so thank you so much for that. And with that said, until next time, enjoy reading. Hello! Oh, hi boy. You guys are so cute. Oh my goodness.